Before we get to Jalen Hurts, we have to go back to our first generational quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, Ron Jaworski, better known as Jaws. Now, if you're going to be technical about it, Jaworski wasn't a true Eagle quarterback in the sense that he was actually drafted in the second round by the Los Angeles Rams in 1973 and spent 3 years on their bench before being traded to the Eagles, where he would spend the next decade. So really, for all intents and purposes, he is a franchise quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, and I don't think anyone would debate that, because he is such a beloved figure by the Philly fan base. When Jaws joined the Eagles in 1977, he began to string together winning seasons, something the franchise hadn't done in decades. Given the success, it didn't take long for fans to fall in love. In 1978 and 1979, he would lead the team to the playoffs, although both would be short visits to the postseason. In 1980, Jaws put together a magical season. The Eagles started hot with an 11-1 start before finishing 12-4 on the season. He finished with 3,529 passing yards and 27 touchdowns to only 6 interceptions. He easily moved past the Vikings in the divisional round before finding themselves in one of the biggest games in Eagles history, a matchup with their heated rivals, the Dallas Cowboys, in the NFC Conference Championship. The Eagles had lost 19 of their previous 23 games against Dallas, but that would all change with a 20-7 victory over the Cowboys to advance to the first Super Bowl appearance in Eagles history. Unfortunately for Jaworski and the Eagles, the team would lose 27-10 in Super Bowl 15 to the Oakland Raiders. Jaws would have another successful season in 1981, but from there, he really began to fall off. After suffering an injury in 1986, after yet another shaky start to the season, Jaworski would lose his job as starting quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles. Some might define his career by being shadowed by losing the team's first and to that point only Super Bowl appearance in history, but I think most would agree to look fondly at his career. It may have resulted in that loss, but he was still the first to help lead the team to a Super Bowl, and he brought a period of sustained success, something the team had not seen in a long time. He finished his career with 1 Pro Bowl appearance for his 1980 season and a 73-69-1 win-loss record. During his 15 total seasons in the NFL, 10 of which were with the Eagles, Jaws put up 28,190 yards passing and 179 touchdowns. To this day, he still ranks as the second all-time passing yards and passing touchdowns leader in Eagles history. There were a few magical seasons that made Jaws a beloved quarterback in Philadelphia, before his career fizzled out and he was replaced as the starter. The quarterback who replaced him? None other than the next generational quarterback on our list, the great Randall Cunningham. One of the most exciting players to watch in Eagles history, but also possibly one of the most frustrating, as much of his greatness was clouded by injury and thoughts of what could have been. Randall Cunningham arrived on the Eagles after a collegiate career at UNLV that got him drafted in the second round of the 1985 draft. Cunningham rode the bench for the majority of his rookie season, before a head coaching change in 1986 led to more opportunities. New head coach, Buddy Ryan, began using Cunningham on third down situations where his extreme athleticism could hopefully convert big plays. But in week 10 of his sophomore season in the NFL, an injury from the previously mentioned Ron Jaworski would thrust Cunningham into the starting lineup. His strong arm and insane mobility were too tantalizing for the Eagles coaching staff, and Cunningham would remain entrenched as the starter for the next 9 years. The only thing that could truly hold Cunningham back would be terrible injury luck. Although part of the reason why he got hurt so often has to do with the absolute beating he received by playing behind one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. I'll put it this way, in the 1986 season, where he didn't even take over as a full-time starter until week 10, Cunningham was sacked an Eagles franchise record 72 times. Yes, 72 times in that one season. And it was really relentless throughout his whole career, leading the NFL in times sacked 5 out of his 9 seasons in Philadelphia. But despite all the nagging injuries, when Cunningham was fully healthy on the field, he was a force to be reckoned with. His breakout season occurred in 1988, when he passed for 3,808 yards and 24 touchdowns, combined with 624 yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground, leading the Eagles to their first playoff appearance in nearly a decade. That season, he also earned his first visit to the Pro Bowl and was elected by players to be the starting quarterback for the NFC team, the first black quarterback to ever be elected as a Pro Bowl starter. 2 years later, in 1990, Cunningham would put together the best season of his career, a year in which he combined for 3,000 2,466 yards and 30 touchdowns in the air, and 942 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. Absolutely insane numbers. He averaged 8 yards per rush, the most ever by an Eagles player and the third most in history. And despite all of that, he was robbed of winning the NFL MVP award. Although for consolation, he did make his third consecutive Pro Bowl and third consecutive playoff appearance. Unfortunately though, this would be his last fully healthy season as an Eagle. An ACL tear in week 1 of the 1991 season would derail the rest of his career, as fallout from that injury and others caused him to lose some of that magic. Feeling disrespected for his efforts and being sidelined with yet another injury, Cunningham would retire from football at age 33 at the end of the 1995 season. He would be coaxed out of retirement in 1997, not by the Eagles, but instead by head coach Dennis Green of the Minnesota Vikings, where injury would still mar his play. But he was at least able to go on one last run in 1998, finishing with a record of 13-1 in the regular season, missing only 2 games and putting up 3,704 yards and 34 touchdowns at age 35. He earned his 4th and last Pro Bowl appearance, but he also earned his first team All-Pro award for that season, and coming in second in voting for MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, and Comeback Player of the Year. So close and yet so far for more legacy-defining awards. A good summation really for his entire career, one of freakish talent that could only be tamed by unfortunate injury woes. In total, he accumulated 29,979 passing yards and 207 touchdowns to go along with 4,928 yards and 35 touchdowns rushing. He spent 11 of his 16 years in the NFL on the Eagles, and to this day ranks as the 3rd all-time in passing yards, 3rd all-time in passing touchdowns, 6th all-time in rushing yards, and 5th all-time in rushing touchdowns in Eagles history. And just one more fun fact about Cunningham before we move on. He was also a very talented punter, owning the Eagles' record for the longest punt at 91 yards. And finishing his career with 20 total punts for an average of 44.7 yards per punt. Truly a one-of-a-kind athlete, who easily belongs on this list of generational talent at the Eagles quarterback position. Our next generational quarterback to make the list was drafted by the Eagles with the number 2 overall pick just 4 years after Cunningham retired. He is known for having a bit of a rocky relationship with Eagles fans, but there is no denying the numbers in terms of his greatness. Of course, we are talking about the talented passer Donovan McNabb. It didn't take long for McNabb to heat up, earning a Pro Bowl appearance and coming in second place in MVP voting in just his second year, for his efforts in helping leading the Eagles from a 5-11 season the previous year to an 11-5 finish in 2000. He would be the first in a streak of winning seasons and playoff appearances for the next 6 out of 7 years, with McNabb as the starter. The only year in which they missed was one in which McNabb got injured mid-season. During that span, in 2004, McNabb put together the best season of his career. The team would finish 13-3 on the back of the newly formed offensive triplets of McNabb, Brian Westbrook, and Terrell Owens. Owens in particular was a massive boon for McNabb, who through his first few years of his career had a very subpar receiving core to work with. Owens finished with 1,200 receiving yards and 14 touchdowns, while McNabb finished with 3,875 passing yards and a career-high 31 touchdowns to only 8 interceptions, to lead the team to a really strong start to the season. In fact, the Eagles had locked up first place in their division and thus a playoff spot, with still 5 weeks to play in the regular season, just the 3rd team in NFL history to do that. The Eagles easily plowed their way through the playoffs as well, with McNabb at the helm, all the way to Super Bowl 39 against the New England Patriots. McNabb would become the first quarterback since Ron Jaworski to lead the Eagles to a Super Bowl appearance. But like Jaworski, he would come up just short, with the Eagles losing 21-24 to Tom Brady's Patriots dynasty. The following season in 2005, everything would begin to unravel. Terrell Owens became a distraction, to say the least, and would mark his last season as an Eagle. McNabb would play through a sports hernia and sore thumb before his season was officially ended when he was placed on injury reserve following a groin injury. His 2006 season would also be cut short following an ACL tear in Week 11. In 2008, McNabb would finally start all 16 games for the first time in 4 years, putting up 3,916 yards and 23 touchdowns, and taking the team all the way to the NFC Conference Championship. Yet, McNabb would lose the championship round for the 4th time in his career, In 2009, he would put up another impressive statistical season and make his 6th and final Pro Bowl appearance of his career. Yet he would lose in the wild card round for the first time in his entire career. Criticism began to grow for McNabb despite his still kind of decent play, but the team was ready to move on from the 34-year-old vet. The Eagles would trade McNabb to Washington before the start of the 2010 season, marking the end of his 11 years in Philadelphia. After one season in Washington, he would be traded once again, this time to Minnesota, before finally retiring at the end of the 2011 season. In total, McNabb would finish his career with 37,276 passing yards and 234 passing touchdowns, and 3,459 yards and 29 touchdowns on the ground. McNabb holds the Eagles' all-time franchise records in passing yards and touchdowns, and comes in 10th all-time in Eagles rushing yards and 8th all-time in Eagles rushing touchdowns. Despite some controversy through his career, there is no doubt that McNabb is the best quarterback in Eagles history, and led the team to a plethora of winning seasons despite some often subpar talent around him. However, he will always be shadowed by coming up just short of greatness in the playoffs over and over again. A decade following the departure of Donovan McNabb, Eagles fans are hoping they have found their next franchise quarterback of the future in Jalen Hurts. Hurts was drafted in the second round of the 2020 NFL Draft to push Carson Wentz at quarterback. In week 13 of his rookie season, Hurts was put into action over a struggling Wentz, and he looked promising. He held on to that job for the remainder of the season. In 2021, under new head coach Nick Sirianni, Hurts was named as the starter for the regular season. Despite missing 1 week to an ankle injury, Hurts put up over 3,000 yards passing and 16 touchdowns, along with an impressive 784 yards and 10 touchdowns rushing the football. This led the Eagles to a 9-8 finish and a wildcard berth in Hurts' first year as the unquestioned starter. And his third NFL season looks to be even better. At the time of recording this audio, in week 8 of the 2022 season, the Eagles are in first place with a 6-0 record, and Hurts is playing lights out football, hurting opposing defenses through the air and on the ground. The sample size has been small, but from what we've seen, he has the tools to be something special. The question is, will he be able to put it all together? Is it too early to be crowning Hurts? Yes. Early success doesn't always mean sustained success, and Eagles fans should be intimately familiar with this concept just coming out of a relationship with Carson Wentz. In order to find Hurts' spot on this list, he will need to be able to sustain and string together multiple winning seasons and win playoff games. And his play, of course, will have to continue to grow as he gains more experience to fully maximize his physical potential. But in the meantime, Eagles fans can sit back and enjoy watching this young quarterback begin his journey. And here's to hoping it's a long and successful ride. While the Philadelphia Eagles have never had a Hall of Fame quarterback, there is no denying they have had elite talent at the position walk through their doors for generation after generation. The Eagles have had lots of splotches of greatness, such as Tommy Thompson, a season or two of Michael Vick, Nick Foles, and Carson Wentz, but none were able to sustain success and be deemed true franchise guys. However, each quarterback on this list today was at least at some point considered amongst the best at their position for their time period and strung together multiple seasons of high-level play. Could Jalen Hurts be the next to do it? Only time will tell. Thanks so much for watching this video. I do really appreciate it. And I'd like to know, how would you rank the best quarterbacks in Eagles history? Who's number one in your mind? Additionally, please give this video a like if you enjoyed, and consider subscribing to stay notified of my future uploads. Thank you all so much again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.